Hi, so welcome back. This is episode 3 of AAC Innovations. I'm Laura Hayes.
And I'm Cheryl Livingston.
And welcome. How you doing, Cheryl?
I'm all right. It's a good morning, so I'm good.
Fall is officially here.
Yes, it is. Lots of leaves are changing.
And as you can see, I got a new house. It's right behind me. And for those of you watching, I apparently am sponsored by Bear today because I have a lovely green room that I've thrown on my virtual background.
It was nice of you to have that all done for us for our podcast.
You know, do what you can. So how's your week going? Any fun finds? Any
Oh, wow.
ahas this week?
Well, so I am I don't think we've talked about before, Talking with Tech fan. It's a podcast, and it's Rachel Madel and Chris Bouget. And they've been doing it for, I guess, several years now, haven't they? And so every week, basically, they have a podcast. I think that's kind of where we got this idea, wasn't it, Laura?
It was, yeah. We had some major inspiration from them.
So their podcast this week. So again, you can go to Talking with Tech on YouTube. I have Podbean that I listen to it on my phone. There's all different ways you can
Any of your podcast streaming,
Okay.
They're on all the channels for the most part.
But this week, what was really, really cool is their actual post, their podcast, wasn't them this time, which is, they're always good, but this one was a little different. It is Aaron Sheldon, who is somebody who's been in the field now for a while and is very, very well spoken and has a wonderful viewpoint of AAC because her daughter uses AAC, but she's also now gone into more education training for herself. I don't think she's becoming a speech pathologist, but she's definitely specialized
Special education.
Yeah. But she did the interview with Karen Erickson, who
love
is
her.
somebody, just wonderful person who has made her life career talking about AAC and literacy. And so they are talking. And so the first session was posted on Talking with Tech, and then they'll do the second session next, or maybe it was this week. I'm behind on my schedule. But anyway,
it'll be out there. It'll be out there for listening. And any
great interview.
And Karen Erickson is just like the guru, as you mentioned, Cheryl, of AAC and literacy. A lot of the stuff that comes out of Chapel Hill and UNC is all out of her brilliant mind. Her proteges go out and do amazing, wonderful things. And it's just...
And she's been doing this for years. I remember way back, before when I was working for PRC, definitely we were talking about Karen Erickson's work. So yeah, she's good. And I have her book. I don't have it right here with me, but I have her book that she most recently published. So, Laura and I definitely want to make sure we're making, if nothing else, planting seeds about how we need to be promoting literacy with all of our students. And again, we do it at the level that they're where they are. It's not that they're going to automatically learn this stuff, but we can teach it. And I think sometimes we as old speech pathologists, I'll take this one, have been kind of dismissed. Communication, definitely, but we weren't so much focused on literacy as far as reading and writing. But these communication devices and these systems that we're giving these kids, that's what they're doing. They're writing and they're learning to read with all of it. So we should be pulling all this together so that they have a better, a well-rounded understanding of what these words are and how they can then either sound out, spell a word, to even take their communication further. Because right now they're kind of stuck. They only have what we gave them. And if they can spell, they can say anything.
Gosh, and I was just thinking about this morning because Wesley went over, he was getting ready for daycare, and he went over. Wesley's my 2.5-year-old, for those of you who are new to us, but we're really starting, I've been reading to the child since he was 2 weeks old, no joke, maybe even sooner. It might have been like the first day I brought him home. But he is really getting into letters now. And so he walked over to this little preschool book I had, and he pulled out a marker and he starts going, I'm going to write, Mama, I wrote your name. Oh. And now, at no point was there any legible
Yeah.
lines. Like I mean, he's got a circle, he's got a straight line. We loves the letter O. We can sometimes identify a W for his first name,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not there yet. But then he got feedback. He told me, with his language, Mom, I wrote a mama. And I was like, oh, that's great, buddy. And he's so proud. And so then he goes, I wrote Wesley. And so then Brian comes down, my husband, and he's like, I wrote Dada.
Oh
And just
my.
this like, small little piece of writing that he knew was important, but then he had the language to tell me. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
immediately, of course, because my mind goes
Yeah.
to AAC. I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's so important when these kiddos are babbling and, going to their keyboard, going to the words on their page, and we don't think that they're meaningful. That feedback is so crucial because that's how we shape what they're going to do. That's how we reinforce, like, yes, we attach meaning to it. Yes, this does mean something. So it's just those moments. I should have pulled out my camera and taped it, but I forgot. But it's just so fun to watch, like how
So
that
to
progresses.
you weren't playing school, you weren't doing anything that had, you're trying to get out the door, right?
Toddler time, as I like to call it. We start an hour ahead of where we think we need to be 5 minutes
Yeah.
later. It's fine.
But the fact that just kind of, where did that even come from on this Wednesday morning that he felt like he needed to do some writing? Yeah. But even like when they're drawing, how much with our kids do we, they'll draw some of you like, oh, that's wonderful. What is it?
Right.
we just, but that's how they are explaining it to us. So we do need to put more emphasis on that with our kiddos. Just
and the movement
right
behind
or
it. We
wrong.
talk about that in our switch class that we do. It's so important. Even if they can't physically hold a pencil or a writing utensil, there are so many alternative ways to do some of those precursors to legible writing, like you said, scribbling, coloring, switch activated art activities. Those are
Or
so important.
even if they're just kind of babbling on their letter page, it's okay. There's no, I don't, again, with the emphasis on there's no wrong activation.
Right.
We need to make sure they see it as meaningful because we then appreciate that they've done it. Yeah.
Right, 100%. So we will be definitely talking about AAC and literacy at a different time because it's such a great topic. But today we're going to backtrack because one of the things, maybe the number one thing we've been getting asked about with teletherapy recently, and we get asked a lot about this topic anyway when we're in person, is picture exchange communication systems. And that is a fancy way of saying PECS. So we are going to be talking about that today.
Yeah, we and again, if I could go back and rename things, Pyramid is the company that created the picture exchange communication system. But the fact that it starts with picture is very sometimes not misleading. It's confusing because we are very picture oriented. So we sometimes think that if we give a kid a picture, we're using PECS, and we're not. There's a structure, there's phases, there's criteria that needs to be met. And I think sometimes if we don't take time to talk it through, we may not have a good understanding of what that really means. And if we're not doing it the way it's meant to be done, we will say, well, that didn't work. It's like, well, it could have if we would have followed the steps.
Right. So people think PECS is an object. People think that PECS is a book. And PECS is actually the system, the 6-phase based system that you would do to encourage emergent communication with someone using a tool, namely a low-tech picture book with visuals.
We're not worried about anything with voice output. We're worrying about images or objects. Sometimes we have to use objects. It's not necessarily even a picture, but the idea that the student is initiating communication and that they're getting that reinforcement for the fact that they are engaged with another person.
Yeah. And actually, fun fact, my very first exposure to AAC ever was with a little girl with autism in my graduate clinic. And I told, so at the time, again, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but we didn't have any kiddos coming to our clinic that had AAC systems, and no one really had any background to kind of support me. But I said, I know I want to work with kids that have autism. I really want a client and I want to have this exposure. So they, my professors, they reached out and they found someone that was kind of looking. And so I had this little girl, and I had to do a ton of research, right? Because I was just a graduate student, and I was doing this on my own. So I looked into PECS and what I could do with it. And oh my gosh, Cheryl, can I just tell you, that little girl changed my world, because the first time she walked in, I'm pretty sure I pulled out every single toy that the clinic could possibly offer. And I had, by the end of our session, I think we had 40-minute sessions. By the end of our session, every single toy was on the floor and the child was still screaming. And I was like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? Well, 2 weeks later, we had started PECS and we had started phase 1, and that beautiful little girl was able to exchange with me. We started doing some play-based therapy. It just opened her world. And we talk about unlocking the potential that kids have. That was what happened for her with this program.
And prior to you working with her, she had never been exposed to that?
She had never been exposed to any kind of symbolic communication system. I want to say she was 2.5 at the time. Okay. And I still think about her because I show, when I think about, I sometimes show this one video that I have at our first session going, I know exactly how you feel because this was our session. And she's trying to hit me, scream. She would throw her head back. As we know, these kids get so frustrated and they don't have a mode to communicate. So she was self-injurious at times. And I still, to this day, I ask people, I'm like, what do you think she was trying to tell me? And I get everything under the sun from, leave me alone. I hate you. I want something. A lot of people say, like, she wants something. And I'm like, what do you think she wants? I have every toy out. Like, She clearly doesn't want any of those things. She could be hungry. She could be in pain. Well, then I tell everybody, well, her mom, who has never left her side, just left the room 10 minutes ago. Now, what do you think she wants? And of course, she's like, you are a crazy stranger. I don't know you. Like, who are you? You're forcing me to do things I don't want to do. Where's my mommy? Of course, no one will convince me otherwise. I think that she was like, why'd you take my mom away from me? Mean lady. Yeah. But again, we built a rapport. Mom came into our sessions. Mom was a part of the sessions. We used picture exchange communication system. And by the end of our semester, she was at phase 3. We were working on.
Oh, wow.
We saw her twice a week, but by the end of our
that's wonderful
semester, she was at phase 3. It was great, where she was working on discrimination.
But again, to me, that's like the potential, the skill was there with her this whole time. You unlocked it.
Yep. And again, so what I love about PECS too is that when you, at least from my experience with it, when you start working with it, you do start to unlock the piece and you get more joint attention, you get more engagement, you can start to unlock other things with those skills that they now have. So with her, I used Westby's play scale, and she was at the very, very bottom, if anybody's familiar with that. And we moved up to some basic one-step symbolic plays. She would feed a baby. She would do food and drink for a baby. She put a blanket on a baby, like huge skills that she did not have before we started. So
wow,
that's my little story.
My heart's
I know.
full.
I know it can definitely work. But I am not the presenter or the interview that we have today. You did that, Cheryl.
Well, and again, it's just a matter of finding these people who have lived through it, but can tell these wonderful stories. And like I said, I've got some of my own, but I'll share them so another time. But the idea of our interview today was, I am friends with, but have, it's just like another level of friendship as far as admiration goes for Jennifer Davis. And she is currently working for SSD in a Parkway early childhood center. But I met her way back when she first started with SSD, and she was in a high school. So she's going to share that story, or I start her and she continues the story. But anyway, she is somebody who has been with Pyramid, done summer camps with them, studied under them, was a implementer as far as they had training that you could do, and she had done that. So she's very knowledgeable, but very, down to earth. I mean, it's like, it's not that she's preaching it. She's lived it, and she sees definitely what it's all about. And she would love for everybody to have a better understanding. But then also, I think with PECS, it's like you need to embrace the idea that these kids have potential, so much potential, and it carry it through so that they can show that. So that's our interview today.
So without further ado, here is Cheryl and Jen and their discussion on PECS.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Livingston with AAC Innovations, and today I have my good friend and my PECS Pyramids Picture Exchange Communication Systems mentor, Jennifer Davis, and we've known each other for a long time, and she has shared all kinds of information with me regarding PECS, and I wanted to take this opportunity to invite her to come and talk to all of us about her background at PECS and some suggestions she may have for all of us that are working with students that would definitely benefit from using PECS. So hey, Jennifer, how's it going today?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
How are you?
I'm all right. So if you don't mind giving us a little bit of information about yourself, a little bit of background history on kind of how you came to be so knowledgeable about PECS.
All right, so I've been a speech pathologist for a long time. Seems like a long time, since about 2000. And I had my first training in PECS in, I think it was about 2005. And it led to more trainings. I did another PECS training, a review, and then another initial training. It changed my philosophy. It changed my whole thought on speech language and on how we teach communication. And so I kind of craved and wanted more and more and more. Then I was really fortunate one summer to spend some time with Pyramid doing a kind of a mentoring program that they had. And I went and helped out with some of their summer camps, which was fun. I got to travel and I got to eat, drink, and sleep PECS for a couple of weeks at a time, and really learn the ins and outs of the picture exchange communication system. And then our goal was to teach kids as quick as we could, and then teach their families and teams and move on to the next group of kids. So I learned a lot. I was an implementer for Pyramid for probably 6 years, but I have since let that lapse just because it doesn't necessarily fit into what I do every day, because I work with a lot of different kids that have different types of communication systems, not just PECS.
And to be an implementer, you had to jump through some hoops, right?
Oh, yeah, I had to jump through a lot of hoops. Lots of sending videos, getting feedback, making case studies, having them watch me train. And then there were like hours and hours of tests that you had to complete.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you had to renew it every 3 years. And after I renewed it once, I thought, I love it, but the theory is that I would have been an implementer for Missouri, and people from within the state and like adjoining states were calling me for input on how to do it, and I just really didn't want to do private practice. I wanted to work with a school district, and so to do all that, to keep up implementer, to really not do private practice with it, just seemed like a lot.
Right.
And it's very expensive.
Yes, yes. And as a speech pathologist for special school district for these last several years, you didn't get to pick and choose your caseload. So it wasn't like you could only take students that were working on PECS. So yeah, no, it became too much.
Yeah, that's right.
But the wealth of knowledge that you gained during that time is what we're going to tap into. And I have to say, I don't know if you remember, Jennifer, how we met.
Oh, I do remember.
I have been an all-com facilitator for special for, this is my 13th year. And I was at one of the Rockwood buildings at the high school. And I met a young man. And I said, we really should be doing, PECS with this guy. And the speech pathologist who I was working with says about, well, we've got another speech pathologist that's in the building. And I think maybe she knows something about PECS, and they had you come when I was there. And I was like, oh, so I just was like, oh my gosh, I've just been, blessed with the most wonderful gift. And so that was that shortly after that, then you transferred to Litzinger, where I also was supporting students.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, that first kid we used PECS with in Rockwood, it changed his life. He
Oh,
was a really big nonverbal student
English
who, I
was a
mean,
second language. Remember,
yes,
it
English
was.
was a second language,
Mhm,
and bright young man,
mhm,
but had been locked in his own body for a long time and
mhm,
couldn't communicate with anyone, and kind of resorted to using a lot of behaviors.
mhm, mhm.
But
And
once
and again,
he
he was one of those like
trusted, whew,
18, 19-year-old guys
he
who
was a
was
big
like
boy.
6'2", and
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I remember
yeah.
saying to his assistant, "You will sit right here, and I promise you, I will be okay,
Mhm.
and we will work." And that kid loved me. He would find me
Oh,
anywhere in the building because I got him, and he
yeah,
knew when he
yeah.
gave me those pictures, they would always work and had meaning. And when I had to tell him no, he understood because we had that trust.
Mhm. And I remember, and
Changed his life.
I talk about it still to this day, how I watched, you were sitting at a table across from him, and, I don't know, you had grapes or something, something that he was requesting. They were within his reach. I mean, he could have
Yeah.
easily just reached over and grabbed whatever he wanted. He didn't. And then
Mhm.
I think it was something, you didn't have an official picture. You drew grapes on a card. But it was just the idea that he knew, he trusted you,
Yeah.
and he exchanged. And I was like, oh my.
Yeah.
And again, everybody prior to all this, him learning to use the PECS system, he was just grabbing, and I don't know, it was rough. So
He
yes.
would move people. He
Oh,
would pretty
that's
much
right. Yeah.
move you to what he wanted
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
to get what he wanted.
Right. Because that's all
Yeah.
that he had seen work
Mhm.
previously.
And then we realized he liked all kinds of things. He loved cars and
Well,
he
I remember
loved
you used to
vehicles.
get those
Those
free little
trader
trader
magazines, I don't
magazines.
know if they make those anymore, but he loved those things and he loved
Yes.
car videos and he
Yes.
loved anything to do with race cars. And we found out he liked NASCAR and then we could use that for math. And I mean, it just opened up his door
And
to more
again,
learning.
we are talking high school. And again, he was considered at least a junior, wasn't he?
I
Maybe a
think so.
sophomore.
Well, he
I
was
mean,
a big kid.
but it was,
Yeah, he
again, it
was
was one of those deals where they had just
junior.
moved into the area.
Yeah.
He was from a different town. So it was like he was new to everybody. But no, Jennifer unlocked all kinds of
Yeah.
potential and all kinds of language opportunities that he had, but he didn't know how to show.
I mean, I think we always go back to independence of employability and life happiness. And he did not have any of those options
Mm-mm.
until we really learned that he could be a functional communicator with PECS and move that then into more language.
Mm-hmm.
So it was life-changing.
And I just seemed like he, I don't know, just disappeared. So I think maybe they
He
moved
moved,
out of Rockwood, maybe into another
moved.
district or something. I'm not sure. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I can't say whatever became of that, but it was great what we, got to see happen.
And his families, no matter where they moved, they still had their PECS.
Right,
So
right, right. No,
yeah.
you had that was firmly established by that point.
Mhm.
Yeah. So as far as, again, we've kind of been talking about it in general terms. When you meet somebody new, Jen, and you're, okay, we're going to try this, whether it's, and right now I should say Jen's working early childhood, so she's getting to do the little bitty guys. She's done it all throughout her
Yeah.
career, but any part of the development of these kiddos that we're referring to, how do you generally explain PECS? What is your kind of little speech you give?
No, usually I talk about the kind of the philosophy that it marries applied behavior analysis theory with language theory and development. It really hits functional communication skills. It breaks communication down into the smallest, the first piece, that initiation. Um, Specifically that a kid will gain the understanding of how to communicate and why they communicate and what they want to communicate for. I really think that it's very functional. I get a little careful because I get very specific and precise with PECS and get all upset. I get all upset, let's just be honest, when people say they're doing PECS and they're not doing PECS or they're not doing very clean PECS, because it
I'd
is a
like to
system.
change the name of it because there's too much confusion of what people are doing.
It is, and I think we can use a lot of great pictures and universal supports, but I think if we're going to call it picture exchange communication system, then we need to stick to the phases and use the program with validity, because it has research to back it when we use the program the right way.
Right.
And what happens when we don't use the program the right way is that it doesn't work as well. And then it gets a bad name, and I don't think that's very fair.
No, it's not.
And I disliked when I was in like middle school and people would say, oh, we're not doing PECS again because he did that and he mastered that. And I'm like, well, he did, but he doesn't now because he doesn't initiate now. His initiation now is to hit you or to go get what he wants. That's not initiation. So if he did do PECS, we just need to go back and clean it up a little bit. And what I find is that the kids really did not do PECS. When the parents really understand what I'm doing and what I want the kids to do, they're like, oh no, we didn't do that. We just used picture choice boards. And I'm like, well, there's a big difference. So picture choice boards and PECS is not the same thing. That PECS is very systematic. It has specific phases. The importance of a communication partner is established in the very beginning. The importance of having someone to prompt and fade as we break language down into small steps is critical to it. And I think the big difference is just the phases that look at like initiation and can the kid pick up, reach, and release, and can they do it independently? And are we using that philosophy within applied behavior analysis? Are we using some of the methodology like backward chaining and fading a prompter and knowing when to fade and not over prompting it, no verbal prompts? So we're using all of those critical pieces of communication within the system. That's different than just giving kids pictures. I also like that it has steps for distance and persistence, you know, because I like early childhood and that language development. I like kids that nag, and PECS allows that. It encourages that. It teaches nagging. I also think it changed my interest in how I look at, you know, PECS calls it discrimination, but really what it is understanding symbols and the importance of understanding language. So can kids discriminate different picture symbols, and where are they at with that? And how can we help them? Do they see, you know, in pictures, do they see the foreground? Do they see the background? Do they see the object? Do we need real photos? I like to figure all that out because I think that's important for all their learning.
It is. It's all day for them, but we don't appreciate it until we start sticking a picture in front of them.
Right. And then that helps me when I'm working on literacy and things like that to know what type of symbols they need, what kind of pictures they need. I also, you know, we talk about when we move to the like an I want sentence and we move to using adjectives, we call them attributes in the PECS world. But when we move to that, it's really increasing MLU. It's how much more language can they give? How much more description can they give? You know, we work on then responding to questions later, commenting. So I think to me, it just made it a little bit more clear on when a kid is missing something, where we need to go back and fill in the gaps. You know, I see in when I get IEPs that so often kids have holes and they're not really, I mean, we're making a little bit of progress in their IEP goals, but really because we put so many cues into it, of course they're going to meet that goal. We wrote a good goal. But when I look at what they really need, they need that, those other pieces. You know, they don't need just to respond, they need to comment, and they need to, you know, use more core language. I think PECS, they've never said not to use core, and they've kind of come back and said, well, of course, we always say to use core, it's just got to be motivating. And I think that most of us that use core language use it in the form of it's motivating. And I don't think there's any difference between doing a device saying on or a kid exchanging a symbol for on.
No.
It gets a little tricky when you look at discrimination because kids have trouble with symbols. And so we have to teach on 5,000 different ways because the kids need to generalize it. But really, even when we're using a higher tech device, we have to teach concepts 5,000 different ways so the kids generalize it. It's about the repetition. And even my kids that struggle with discrimination, they're going to learn those symbols that are motivating, even the core. So they're going to learn go, they're going to learn on. I've even gone back to, instead of teaching all of the specific foods to with some of those kids, teach eat, 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 instead of all the foods. But I'm kind of a stickler with that too. I think we do kids we're not servicing them correctly if we only teach them to communicate for food. I think we have to teach them to communicate with play. And if you're using PECS only to do food, then you've kind of missed the boat, because you can do so much with everything from core words to activities that they may like.
And then I think others see them as being more communicative when it's well-rounded, whereas they only see it as being a food getter, then they don't think of that as being much of a, you know, a competency that this child is showing. So
Right. We could have a whole nother chit chat about you know, the language processing that kids, you know, I'm kind of old school, and I was really excited. I did that course on echolalia this summer through Asha, and she talked extensively about Gestalt language processors, and I think PECS is great for those kids that learn through Gestalt methods. So if they are going to learn subject, verb, object, they probably are going to catch on so quick, they might not need PECS, or you might be able to do it so fast.
Right.
But if it's a kiddo that truly learns chunks of language and recombines the chunks and is echolalic, then you might really need to consider, is the picture exchange communication system the right system for them? Because it has that philosophy in the heart of it.
Right. Yeah.
So I know we were thinking back, you know, as I was thinking about doing this, I was thinking about a kid who, bless his little heart, right before we went out in March, I had just been, it was like the end of February, right before spring break. Maybe it was the Friday before spring break. I had been to their house, and it was supposed to be an hour long. I'm going to meet your private ABA person. I'm not really supposed to go to houses, but, you know, we made this exception. The building happened to be closed for something that day. I mean, it just worked out perfect that I was going into their house, and I brought his textbook. He was a 3.5-year-old. We hadn't had him very long. He had started probably October, November, from First Steps. Came to us with PECS, quickly realized he hadn't really had PECS. He had just used some pictures, but he hadn't had formal training in the stages and the phases of PECS. Was very fortunate that his discrimination was strong, and we had a lot of motivators for him. He was pretty easily engaged. And so he kind of flew through the program. So kind of decided, okay, I'm going to make this home visit because I want the family to see how awesome he's doing. Mom was kind of on board, but not totally bought in yet, but was willing enough to like start making pictures, and had like a binder at home with pictures in it. So you could tell she was ready for something. So went out to the house. My 1-hour visit turned into 4.5 hours till I was like, I am tired now. This was more PECS training than I expected. But when I walked in the door, the kid looked at me, and I had his PECS book with me. He about tackled me to get it, opened up his PECS book, and started asking for things that he wanted. And when the team saw that he was using it so fluently, they were shocked. He tolerated me telling him, no, I didn't bring like all his favorites with me. I just
stuff that you usually have.
I didn't have my box of goodies, or some of his favorite things around the classroom. And he tolerated me telling him, no, that's at school. He went and got my picture and compared it to the picture that his mom had for the Cheez-Its. I mean, it was like, we didn't have the same Cheez-Its. Look at their Cheez-Its, not the same picture, Ms. Jen. And I'm like, I see that. You know, he showed me in his book, like he would take pictures out of his home book then and put it in his school book. And I knew, oh yeah, it would be great if we had that chair at school. He had this chair that he liked to, it was like a lazy boy. He could get that thing rocking and just about tip over, but he wanted that chair. I never would have known that a rocking chair is something he'd like. So it was really eye-opening, and it definitely, it was the hook the family needed. So we did lots of training, set it up. Before I left there, he had generalized and was doing distance with the family and with his ABA people. He was tolerating them, saying no. So it was well worth my day.
And it turned out to be 7 months later that he's still
and he's still at home. So that was right before spring break. Spring break hit. We went lockdown right afterwards. I went ahead while we were on virtual. We moved him to the I Want. I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Mhm.
But we had just started at school.
Mhm.
So I felt like, I think we can. Mom was active in our sessions. She was kind of into our sessions. She was overwhelmed and frustrated when we had sessions where he ran all over the house.
Yeah.
And so we were back to sitting at a table. So what better time, when you're working on I Want, to go back to a table.
Mhm.
He quickly picked up on new pictures. We had to teach new pictures a little bit, but
Mhm.
he could. He had the vocabulary for it, so we went ahead with I Want. And then before we were done in May, we had just a little tiny bit of attributes,
Okay.
just a few adjectives for some highly, highly motivated. He wanted certain videos
Oh, okay.
on the screen and specifically, and so we use those video names as the attribute.
Okay.
So it was, he wanted this Muffin Man video. It was like the
Oh.
super simple Muffin Man, or a specific, video.
Okay.
And so I don't know if I broke some copyright laws. We did some screenshots of
Well, I was
some.
gonna say you just took pictures of that
We took
cover, right?
pictures
Okay.
of the covers, and
Yeah.
we use those. Super. He likes super simple over the Kaboom Kids or whatever. So
Okay.
we did some things like that, and did some attributes too.
Okay.
It worked.
Yeah. Now, again, good timing that you were able to get all that going and then they could follow through. So that was wonderful.
And they were interested.
Mhm.
They had seen some improvement at home.
Mhm.
Once you
Right.
have that hook, it helps.
Yeah. And that I find, even with staff, we've got to find a hook. We talk about motivating our students, but we also need to motivate our staff. What have you found as far as the idea that, we do it face to face. Now have been doing some virtual, again, there's no magic definitely for that.
No.
But as far as, like we were saying, the hooks for people to continue on, to persevere, both families and staff, what would you suggest?
I kind of use this time. I think all my OGTOM kids are hard. And it's been interesting to see what they do at school is not always the same at home. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Sometimes they use it only to respond at home, because that's the way we do at home. We don't focus on initiation as much. So I definitely think that, like, I've used this time as a way to become more family centered. That's our push right now in early childhood. I know we're very much into the end of last year. We had a lot of trainings and we wanted more family engagement. And so it just seemed like this was the natural time to really hit that hard. So during my sessions, I spend a lot of time explaining why I'm doing it and why did we just spend so much time on that schedule. So if we're ending 5 minutes early, it's great, because I have like 3 things I wanted to teach the parents about. This is how I did this and why. Or to ask them, how is this going? How can we incorporate that? And that's been really good for OGTOM. Because when parents see me doing activities with it, whether it's PECS or something else, then they're quick to ask more questions.
And I say, have you
working?
Felt like they are did you develop, I guess they had to develop that rapport with the parent too, for them to feel comfortable and trust you to ask for questions or ask for help, right?
Yes. Yeah, because I have a lot of new kids on my caseload. I kind of took over for someone who retired, and kind of moved a little bit in some buildings. And so I have quite a few new kids, building that rapport with the families. I think they thought their goal with the OGCOM was just to program it like that. They felt good programming it, which was pretty cool, but they didn't really know how to use it in any activities.
Right. Yeah. To make it actually work.
Make it actually work. Yeah. And they would say, oh, they won't let me touch it. Or they, he just takes all the pictures off. So working with parents with that and giving them, using this time as benefits for the families, because communication happens everywhere. And teaching the families what is functional communication, I think, has been an aha moment. I don't know if I think even as a field, we struggle with what's functional communication. But to work with the parents on, well, you knew what that was, but I didn't hear, what did they say? I didn't understand that speech, or I don't know what that means. What does it mean? And to say, so will grandma know? Or what if you guys go out for the evening and you had a sitter, would they know? Or what if there was an emergency? And so just really teaching families about functional communication has been a good hook during this virtual time to get families wanting to. I know the first few sessions, it was, well, where's your communication book? Where's your you know, and I have kids on everything from low tech to high tech. Where's your system? To now, man, you know, it's, well, they just had it a minute ago, and sure enough, the kid carries it around with them, and you know,
and like I said, that's a good problem to have, is if they're using it someplace else, then that means they're using it.
Yes.
You found that and again, I'm just talking about parents in general, their understanding of development of language. And again, it's not innate. If you have typically developing kids, you might be able to compare, but sometimes our parents either don't see that connection, or this may be their only child or their oldest child, so they don't even have anybody to compare it to. So have you found you've spent a lot of time on that thought process too?
Yeah, and just kind of accepting where the kids are at and how we can take smaller steps. I think most of my families, you know, they want them to tell them how they feel and what's wrong.
Right.
And educating them on what steps we need before that, you know, and that's true for my AuCom kids to my kids who are just language impaired.
Right.
So just kind of helping them understand the importance of receptive language and understanding language before WH questions, or understanding categories and what's the point of this. We've done a lot of distant learning plans with, you know, sorting and nature walks and all kinds of things to work on that concepts. But why are we doing that?
Right. And that's what as far as
a lot of time. Nobody wants to do those activities.
Right. And that's the trouble. It's that, and to do it well, you need to be invested in what's going on in that moment. And I feel like all of us parents that are trying to work from home and have their kids home, we're so scattered with our thinking these days that I'm sure it's hard. But I was also thinking, as far as PECS go, that's one of the wonderful things, is that it is spelled out. We call them recipes sometimes for, you know, people want a cookbook. They want to know what to do. Pyramid does that. Sometimes people get a little bit overwhelmed or maybe bogged down with steps, so that they maybe push back because there's too much. But my feeling is, if they will at least take in why and what led to this, and how this is you know, we're working on this skill, but it's going to build on this skill, and then that's going to build on this skill, and it all comes together. And I think if we would be more cognizant of how things come together, our kids would definitely benefit from our time and effort to do that.
Well, and it takes into account generalization.
Yeah.
I think that's one piece that, in a perfect world, my whole job would just be on generalizing language, especially for kids that are getting other services. For example, a kid who's getting, you know, the applied behavior analysis methodology. If they're getting that and they're getting some discrete trial time, it'd be awesome if my whole job was just on generalizing the language they learn discretely. Realistically, though, that's not my only job.
Right.
What is nice about the picture exchange communication system is it works on generalizing from step one. It is put in there so you don't forget about it. It's not just we use this language during this color activity, or we use this language only during this theme. You know, it hits generalizations from the very beginning. It makes you keep going back and using it so you don't lose it.
Right. And that's, again, what we've talked about before, as far as you mentioned coming to the table. It is teaching. I think sometimes we expect the kids just to automatically know, well, you know, here it is, so he should take off. And it's like, no, he has to understand why. He has to understand what's going on and what's in it for me. You know, I think sometimes don't give our kids enough credit for, they are self-centered. We all are, admit it. But the kids definitely are into, you know, what's good for me. But I think they don't understand then how to show you more about what's going on unless you give them structure on how to do that. So they're going to be enjoying your company because you're doing things that they're enjoying, but it's going to be building then on more and more language opportunities. It's a process that they can, you know, see happening. Whereas I think sometimes like I said, we get kind of pigeonholed with, we're only going to do this, or we're only going to do that. And I mean,
here's my lesson. Here's my agenda.
I've got my list. Yes.
Yeah. I like it neat and pretty too.
So as far as when we're looking at kids' motivation, what's going to make them want to be a part of this? A lot of times what I hear is, oh, he only likes 3 things, you know. My frustration is, well, have you explored more? What do you, and that's what I usually say that. So what do you usually say to people if they're kind of like that? Well, this isn't going to work because he's not motivated. What have you found to be?
I usually find if I just take a minute with them and we just I say, let's step back and let's just observe. Let's see what they're doing. And we stand back and observe. We either notice, that kid is rolling. Well, you can ask to roll, or what can we roll? What things can roll? Like if we take a minute and we just start observing, can we find more things?
So and they may not be school things, right?
Yeah, kind of. But you know what? I've had kids do really odd things. Like I had a kiddo that had very few reinforcers, very few, and it was because he had no toy skills. So he had zero toy use.
No, that's another whole time. We could do another podcast.
We could do a whole thing on that, right? Yeah. Okay, so I mean, we're teaching toy use, but in the meantime, he only wants to twist that puzzle piece. And I mean, we're going to keep asking for different puzzle pieces because our description is not great either. And if they all have the same function, he still just really wants to turn something, right? So we had to get really creative. So I try to take a step back and observe. And sometimes I'll even start like writing down everything I see him do. And then that gives me more ideas. And like with this kid, he liked certain sounds. From observing, I realized, oh, he's kind of into sounds. Okay. I noticed when he was out on the playground, he liked to get really close to those gen ed kids, which was kind of good, kind of bad, because some of them weren't so sure like what to do, and he wasn't really sure what to do. So we just kind of got close to each other. He wasn't pushing yet, but he didn't really know how to initiate with a peer. Ultimately, he just wanted attention. Like he was a kid who loved attention, which was awesome. I like those kids, but don't have very many of them who just really want, attention. So we gave him a little, and having PECS outside is difficult because everybody touches them in preschool. Like, of course, everybody wants them. And so I attached a little string to his waist, and on that string had a card that said, "Talk to me." And he could go up to a teacher. We started first with the teachers because they were predictable. Right. And they would just say, "Hey," and say his name, and like he would giggle and he loved it. He'd run away. And like that was like, all he wanted was like their attention. Yeah. And so
like, see me, I'm here. Huh?
Yeah. And so it turned into, then after he started doing it with the kids, then we turned into, we could do a chase, or we could do a, come play. So then we ended up having chase and come, and before long he had a whole lot of things he could do on the playground. So I mean, I think you kind of have to stand back, and instead of, some of it has to do with having an open mind. They're not always pretty things. They're not always objects that I would pick. But spinning in that chair, turning in that goofy chair, or listening to a certain song.
I remember you had puffy cheeks. You had somebody.
Oh, I had a kid that loved puffy cheeks. Yes, we can't do that so much with COVID, can we? I don't know how we're gonna do that.
Oh, that's a whole nother world now. That's right.
A whole nother world. But I'm gonna have my shield and my mask, and we can do a different kind of puffy cheeks. Maybe I can find a doll. Maybe he would like Pop the Pig.
Oh, there you go.
The pig gets a big belly. I don't know.
But just the idea that it wasn't a thing. It was like, I think that was the connection between you and that student, but it was a funny looking face. And the fact go back to is that the fact that you did it on, I won't call it demand, I'll call it request. You did something for him in that particular situation, and you did it again and again and again. So I was like, I can't imagine that it was always so exciting after the 150th time.
Not for me, but for them, yeah. And
it was okay.
What do kids, one way that kids communicate are to direct others.
From immediately coming home from the hospital.
Right? I mean, and how often as speech pathologists or parents do we give the kids time to direct us? But gosh, we talk about giving kids control, where they say two things to make kids, right? They have to have attention and control. Wow, what a great way to do both. To give them some ways to direct us. So, I mean, we get goofy. I've had some weird things. I've had from videos to a goofy toy, a little girl who wanted to play with my hair. Of course girls want to play with your hair. Yeah. That's what girls do, right? We could play with baby's hair. Like that one thing then turned into baby's hairs, turned into a Barbie hair, turned into, oh, no hair. Like we can just keep expanding on it. Yes. So you have to get silly. You have to get creative. It is hard. It is super hard. And I find, man, when they go through stuff, it's hard. Or when it works for 2 times.
Right. Well,
It's like,
that's something.
man, that's a bummer.
And that's you may have a whole session planned around what you thought was the thing, the best thing in the world, and they're like, So that's what you always tell people to. You got to have backups. You got to have another thing ready to go.
Yep.
But again, I think that student just kind of checking out too. Are you really listening to me, or is this all about your session versus what I want to do? So I always say give them more credit, because they're running the show, and we want it to be in a way that's it's universally acceptable, but it's also enjoyable for both of us. We don't want it to be a negative thing.
And like when we're doing stop and go, I will give them the stop. Stop. And then I make the wagon stop. So we can get creative and do some weird things.
And this motivation stuff we're talking about applies to all of our kids, not just kids that are using PECS communication system. Yeah. So definitely we need to be more open to that. And like I said, I want to point out that it's not necessarily academics that our kids are going to be motivated by. So sometimes our sit down and work activities definitely are not their thing, but what can we incorporate that would be into that, or working for then become something.
Can it be something goofy? You just have a surprise bag. We started sending that home, this little jaunt of virtual. I started sending home like surprise bags, just the hype of what was in the bag. Like they got mail, and could they get excited and open it up and know, and I don't know, I'd pick stuff out of like surprise boxes. I don't know that it was stuff they loved.
Okay.
But we had a bag, a cool looking bag with fun stuff in it to see what they would do.
Okay. No, that's a great idea. And it's definitely something, like I said, everybody can do. It's not meant to be, it's not rocket science, but it's definitely something we could benefit from. Well, Jen, I appreciate your time. You've done some wonderful things for all of us by sharing your information. We definitely, as far as, I find that PECS is a wonderful system, and I think a lot of our kids benefit. It's definitely something that takes time to learn for the staff, but it's well worth the time and energy. So I wish we could do more.
It is. And I think if we start thinking outside of the box, it can go with your music activity. It can go with your snack activity. It can go with your recess activity. We just have to kind of think differently.
Yeah.
Because there's communication in everything.
Yes, definitely. And that's what we want our kids to be, is to have abilities to communicate through it, anybody at any time, anywhere, about anything, and that has to grow. So we need to start with where they're at and move it forward.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Hey, thanks for chatting with me.
I enjoyed it, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Thanks.
Take care.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Livingston. I'm an ALCOM facilitator for the Special School District of St. Louis County. I wanted to spend a little bit of time today showing you resources that are available for those students that have already been, or who we are considering, working with them on communication using PECS. PECS stands for Picture Exchange Communication System, and it is a part of the Pyramid Educational Consultants company. And I wanted to show you their website, and I wanted to show you how you would have quick, easy access to some resources. So first of all, if you're just learning about PECS, if you go to their PECSUSA.com is the website. If you go to About Us, and if you go to PECS, they have information, just general information about what it is. They talk about the 6 phases of PECS. You may have heard us talk about that your student is at phase 1 all the way up to phase 6. So we start with the beginning at 1, and then we consider the student to be showing us a lot more language and a lot more understanding of their environment when they are able to make comments. So that's our ultimate goal within PECS, is to work up to that level. But today, for our session, I want to move us all the way across to helpful information, and then go down to free materials. So again, this is free for everybody. You can go in and learn more, all kinds of different articles, things that you might find beneficial or advantageous for your student. But then keep scrolling down. I'm going to go to where it says samples, and I'm going to click on some pictures that they've already provided for us. So again, If you are having a movie night and you want to encourage more communication, here are some symbols, visuals that go along with a movie night at home. Everything from things that they might be requesting to saying that they need help to making comments of something they like or they don't like. And again, they're going to learn this through us modeling, through us showing them how that pertains to what's going on. We can make a comment that something's funny. We can say something's too loud, turn it down. Again, just very nice, easy things for you to show. If we are talking about movie night, there's also a video, and I will link it to our resources of one of their consultants actually talking through what she might do on a video night. So that's a nice thing to look for. Also, pictures for Halloween. Again, don't know what Halloween's going to look like this year, but if you're having a party or if you have a student that just really loves to talk about Halloween, I know a lot of adults do too, there's some nice graphics for that. Any picture that you could find on Google Images, photos that you might have can be used. This just makes it a little easier because it's all right here together. They have one for Thanksgiving. So we can get ready for talking about what our Thanksgiving is going to be or what the traditional Thanksgivings are. And then I'm going to go now, and again, there's more here to show you, but I'm going to go back to helpful information and talk about support at home. So I have already gone in and gathered some videos that are on here. Support at home activities, view more activities is where I found a lot of things that I really think are cool. So I've got those already put together for you for the video, the lesson plan, and the pictures. But the idea being, brainstorming, things that you could do around the house. So this is a great, again, you've had lots of time at home, so maybe we need to find new things to do. So I've got some of these things already put together as far as easy access for you as well. But know for sure that everything that you're, wanting to do, things that you would love to hear information on are here. They've got some of their books that are free for downloading. One's called Autism 24/7, a family guide to learning at home and in the community. So again, as much as you can possibly learn, take advantage of this, and we will hopefully see you soon on other videos. Thanks.
So we hope you enjoyed our interview with Jennifer Davis and on PECS, Picture Exchange Communication Systems. And now it's time for our quick tip. We wanted to share a quick tip on what to do if you are struggling with implementing PECS, especially for those tricky kids who might be hard to find motivators for. And we just wanted to quickly highlight 5 different reinforcement inventories that you can find on our Google site. Remembering that our Google site is sites, sites, google.com/ssdmo.org/AAC-site/home. Once you're on the home page, you can scroll over to the tab that says More on the far right upper corner, and you'll see on that under More, you'll see a tab that says Goals, Assessment, and Progress Monitoring. Once you click on that, you're going to see some really great resources, including documentation in the IEP and goal writing. But the 5th folder down is one called Reinforcement Inventories. When you open that, you'll see currently 5 different reinforcement inventories. We're always looking for more, so feel free to share if you find a great one that you like. But they're really great in different ways. So the first one is a home inventory. So very parent-friendly, very family-friendly, that you can send home or utilize to kind of tap into, as Jennifer mentioned, just things that might be really helpful or motivating for the student at home. It doesn't necessarily mean you have those, but you might have something similar that they could be motivated by. So this one's really, really great for students who have some strong reinforcers at home. The next one is from EO Inc., Communication Through Motivation, And this is great because it gives you a range to mark how motivating the potential reinforcers are. Anywhere from not motivating at all the way up to strongly motivating. And another one that I sometimes will add is strongly not motivating, because once you get into phase 3 in discrimination, you are going to want to have some strongly not motivating items as well. So I will sometimes add that. But this is really great because it is comprehensive, and it also breaks it down by area of reinforcement. So you've got visual reinforcement, auditory reinforcement, tactile reinforcement, and movement reinforcement. And this was created by Amy McGinnis, who's a wonderful OT. The next reinforcement inventory that we want to highlight is just a quick reinforcer checklist that was created, and it breaks it down, including some edibles. So for your kiddos that like edibles, it breaks it down and kind of chunks them into different categories that are similar. So if they really like milk, you can try some other liquids. Or if they really like crunchy foods, like popcorn, you could maybe try some raw veggies or corn chips, etc. This one's also really great because it has some social reinforcers. So if you have those students that really like attention, it breaks down different social reinforcement as well. The next one is actually from Pyramid themselves, and this also breaks it down by area of reinforcement, so visual, auditory, tactile, vestibular improprioceptive or movement, smell, and taste. And again, what you would be looking for is just if they had one or two things in one area, you would want to explore some of the other ones that you maybe hadn't thought of. And the last is this sensory diet, which again was created by an OT and breaks down into different areas, especially if you're using or have done an assessment like Every Move Counts, where you're looking at different areas and assessing and observing the student on what they do when presented with a visual object or when they're presented with auditory information, and just kind of watching their response. So again, this was created by a wonderful OT named Cindy Hatch Rasmussen out of Therapy Northwest, and it just breaks it down by different sensory items that they might be interested in. So that's what we currently have available. We hope you find it helpful. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks so much. We will also jump into one more resource for picture exchange communication systems. Thanks for listening.
I hope you enjoyed our interview with Jennifer, and I hope you've learned a lot about the picture exchange communication system, and I hope you're willing to reach out and get even more information. So there's resources galore. Please don't hesitate to ask. Any of your AAC facilitators can definitely point you in the right direction and share. And again, if you just want to chat, give me a call. But definitely we want to make sure that you know that is a huge understanding of what language can be for our students, and that we should try it.
Yeah, and we know PECS is not always the easiest, especially with the population of kiddos that we tend to recommend it for, because they're very early emergent learners that need that support in showing how communication works. So we have PECS manuals, we have all the data sheets, we have classes that support it when we're back in person. Cheryl is she's the amazing instructor for our SSD class that we offer, and I think we'll be hopefully back on in the spring, but we don't know yet. So in the meantime, we hope this has given you a lot of information, and as Cheryl said, we are here. We hope that you've learned a lot, and let us know, give us feedback. Love to hear from you. In the meantime, have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks for coming and seeing us.
Have a good one.
Bye.